Hey everyone, I hope you guys are doing well and welcome to another video. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I do mixed media art. Along with the tutorial, I'll also be showing you guys and also reviewing some of my favorite art supplies. So for paper, I use any type of cardstock, which is around 300 GSM. Next is any kind of mechanical pencil and eraser. I'm pretty sure you guys probably have all of these supplies so far. Next is a set of waterproof fine liners. For these, I typically stick to the color black. Next are some alcohol markers. Oh yes, in case you haven't noticed, all of my favorite art supplies are from Ohuhu. And then the next item are Ohuhu's acrylic marker pens. I would be using these for finer details. And the last art supply is Ohuhu's acrylic paint tubes. I really like how they come with like the brushes, so it's very convenient. I don't need to go buy a new set. And of course, if you're working with acrylic paint, you need your mixing palette. And also a paper towel to mix or clean the brushes. And of course, a jar of water. So these are typically the art supplies which I like to use for my mixed media art. Okay, now it's time for the tutorial. So the first things first is you have your piece of paper and then you do your rough sketch. Oh yes, remember if you're working on like a table, make sure to have some type of material or mat on top of your table and underneath your artwork in case the alcohol marker bleeds through onto the table. So the next step after you finish your sketch is to do the line art. So my favorite line art pens which I've been using recently is Ohuhu's fine liner set, which comes with 8 different pen tips. So one very crucial thing for fine liner pens is that I need to make sure that it's waterproof, because if you're working with like watercolor or alcohol markers and you choose a pen that's not waterproof, it will bleed everywhere. It's also quite important to make sure that the pen set that you have has multiple different sizes. That way you can do finer details and then you can also make broader strokes and have varying line weights throughout the drawing. So yeah, so for my first impressions, these pens were ticking all the boxes. Now let's unbox it. So after you open it, along with the pens, it also comes with an instruction manual. It comes in many different languages, so that's a plus. The manual also has some frequently asked questions on there, but I think there's more on the website as well. Okay, now let's move on to the pens themselves. So the pen tube is very typical of any fine liner pen. It's quite clean, simple. And on the top of the cap, it says the type of brush size. It also says it on the body of the pen, which is quite good. Here is a quick close-up of the brush pen. And just like the alcohol markers, the pen cap also sits snug and nicely on the end. Now let's move on to the smallest pen, which is the 0.05. Well, this pen tip is very fine and very sturdy, which I also really like. So here is a close-up of it. And here is a quick look at the 0.1 and 0.2. Also, I got a quick tip for you guys. So whenever I get new art supplies, I really like to make sure that I swatch them properly. That way I have a guide to see what the pen looks like, what the color looks like, and so on. So as you can see right now, I'm just quickly swatching the pens. I like to draw a few different types of strokes so that I know what it looks like when it's wiggly or when it's more detailed. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite things to do whenever I get new art supplies. Okay, now getting back to the drawing. So right now I'm just doing the line art. So typically I like to go in with a much finer and smaller nib first. So here I'm using either the 0.05 or the 0.1. The only time I really go in with like a super thick nib is probably when I'm doing stuff like the eyes or large areas where I want it to be black. So as you can see right now, well, other than the eyes, I'm going in with a super thin nib and just tracing over the hair and details. During this step, I try not to be too neat when I'm doing the line art. That is because when I keep it more loose and free, it looks more natural. And after I'm finished with the line art, I go in with my eraser. That way it's a lot neater. Now that you've finished your line art, the next step is coloring. So the first art supply that I use is alcohol markers. I like using the ones from Ohuhu because they have the brush tip ones. I really like using brush tips. And what I do is I pick out the colors and then I just fill in all of the colors. I kind of use the alcohol markers almost like a base. So then I do like the skin and the main large colors, and then later on I'll add details with the other art supplies. So I guess the alcohol marker step is like the base coloring and the broader, larger strokes. So I just fill in the skin or the green, and then I also use minimal shading so then there's some depth. And after I finish the base colors with the alcohol markers, I move on to the acrylic paint. So as you saw earlier in the video, I mentioned two different types of acrylic paints. The first one is a pen version, and then the second is the tubed. The order of how I use them really depends. Sometimes if I want a specific color mixed, then I would go with the tubed. And then sometimes if I want like larger areas to be painted, I'll also go with the tube. And then if I want smaller details, I'll go with the pens. Let's start off with looking at the acrylic pens. So as you saw just then, it also comes with a manual and also some awesome pen nibs. The set that I got from Ohuhu was actually pretty nice. It had so many colors. There was a range of darks, mid-tones, and also some fluorescent ones. For those of you who have never used acrylic pens before, I'm going to show you a quick tutorial on how to use them. So first you need to shake it like crazy, and then you need to hold the pen onto the paper and push the nib in and out. And then you can see the nib change color. That's because the paint is actually going down. So here is a close-up of how you get the paint out. And that's pretty much it. And of course, make sure to swatch them colors. Okay, now back to our painting. So after I did the base colors with the alcohol markers, I like to go in with acrylic paint. So right now I'm using the acrylic pens to add smaller details on top of either the line art or the colors. I really like using Ohuhu's acrylic pen because it's very fine and small, so it's really good for like tiny details. I actually didn't know that like there was such thing as the tiny nibs, which I thought was so cool because I've used acrylic pens before and the nibs are huge, so it's really hard to get tiny details in. So the next step is I go back with my fine liner pens to add more depth and go over some of the lines. Okay, so for the next step is the acrylic paint tubes. Ohuhu was super lovely, so they sent me a set to try out and unbox for you guys. So I'm really excited to show you. Okay, let's get into it. So my favorite thing about Ohuhu paint sets, whether it's their watercolor or acrylic ones, is that they come with a set of brushes, which I find really useful because sometimes I actually just don't have brushes with me. I'm not sure if you get the same set if you get the watercolor one, I can't remember, but I think it might be different depending on the paint that you get. But yeah, so the brush set includes 3 flat ones and 3 round ones typically. And it also comes in all different sizes, so that's pretty good. Okay, now let's move on to the paint. So as you can see right now, it comes with many colors. Each tube is quite cute. It comes in 4 ounces or 12 milliliters. And for those of you who have not tried out acrylic paints, a lot of them are kind of like toothpaste, where when you unscrew the cap, there's like a foil covering the paint, and all you need to do is flip the cap over, and then there's like a sharp point. You just need to stab it into the foil. But yes, so here is a nice swatch sheet that I've made of the paint. I find this way to swatch colors, especially when it's paint, pretty good because you don't need to actually get the brush and like wash it and everything each time. But yeah, now let's move on to the acrylic painting. So similar to how I did the acrylic paint pens, I would go over specific areas, but this time, since it's actually paint and I'm using the paintbrush, I'm painting on much larger areas. So the reason why I really like using like the brushes to actually make the painting is because when you use acrylic paint, it's actually quite thick and pasty. So then whenever you use that on top of a painting, it adds a lot of texture, and it's almost like you can kind of touch the large chunks. So that makes the drawing look a lot more fun and dynamic. Now throughout this whole entire drawing process, especially when I'm coloring, I like to go back and forth between the acrylic paint, the alcohol markers, and the acrylic pens. And that is because each art supply has different textures and applications. So as you can see right now, I'm using the acrylic paint pen to add little sparkles and details after I've finished coloring with the alcohol markers and also the acrylic paint. Okay, so we've come to the end of the tutorial. I hope you did enjoy it and also the mini reviews throughout. If you want to see more videos like this, do let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!